So I gotta say, I feel really bad for the Game of Thrones fan. It's already been a full year since Game of Thrones Season 7 dropped. And I gotta say, it's been one of the hardest waits ever, waiting for the finale of Game of Thrones. And it's such a unique show because we're all such big fans that the majority of the entertainment that we get from Game of Thrones isn't even from the show. It's from the news, it's from the predictions and the theories. And I'm just letting you know, be prepared to absorb much more of that content because we still have about another year or about 8 months until we see the last season of Game of Thrones. And to top that off, after that long wait, we're only going to have 6 episodes. But what's important here is that I have key information to scratch the itch of when we're going to get Game of Thrones. How long is the Game of Thrones season going to be? And when will the first trailer drop? So first I want to talk about the Game of Thrones release date. So over the years, Game of Thrones has pretty much owned the month of April. But Season 7 was an exception because it was delayed a couple months, because of weather and all that other fun stuff, and it released in July. And I'm so upset, because we're not getting Game of Thrones until 2019. And Casey Bloys, the programming president of HBO, came forward and said that we're going to get Game of Thrones Season 8 in the first half of 2019. And based on this information, I can almost guarantee you that we will be getting Game of Thrones Season 8 in April of 2019. So Game of Thrones will finally return to the April release window. Because I believe that HBO always wants to release their shows between April and July because that is the time when their users are most engaged. And I think the reason we're waiting so long for Game of Thrones is because they're waiting for that specific release window for business purposes, to make sure that the most amount of people are watching Game of Thrones as possible. Let me give you an example by looking at past seasons. Game of Thrones Season 6 wrapped up filming and went into post-production in December of 2015. And Season 6 was released on April 24th, keeping that April release window. So what that tells you is that they had 4 months after they wrapped filming until the show actually aired. Now let's go to Season 7. Season 7 finished filming in February of 2017. And then Season 7 released in July of 2017. Which tells us that there were 5 months of post-production from when they stopped filming until the episode came out. But in this case, Game of Thrones is in a very unique situation. Game of Thrones Season 8 finished filming in July of 2017. They have a very irregular filming window. If we try and apply this logic to the previous seasons, Game of Thrones Season 8 should be coming out in December of 2018, this year. And granted, post-production may take an additional month because it's the last season and they want to take their time with it. But most importantly, I think they're going to be done Game of Thrones by the end of this year, or in the first month of 2019. But they're going to hold on it for a couple months to make sure it is released in that sweet spot April time slot. So I think it's easy to rule out that Game of Thrones Season 8 will not come out in May, June, or July, because they're going to be done the show well in advance in 2019. So we can expect it, as President Casey Bloys states, in the first half of 2019, probably in April. So that means that we got about 9 months to wait for Game of Thrones Season 8. That is such a long wait that if you feel inclined, you could bear yourself a child. So I wish you all happy waiting, and I'll come out with theories and predictions to try and ease ourselves into that waiting period. But now let's talk about the runtime. Everyone seemed to believe that Game of Thrones would have a runtime of 2 hours for every single episode. Their logic is that since it's 6 episodes, and it's the last season, it must have really long episodes. And Casey Bloys came forward to disprove this news. And to me this makes sense. If you're going to have a 2-hour episode, why don't you just split it up into 2 episodes? I believe we can expect Season 8's episodes to be a little bit longer, but I think 2 hours is a little much. I think the average episode length will be about 65 minutes. And that's very comparable to Game of Thrones Season 7, who had an episode average of 63 minutes. What I will say though is that we could probably expect a very long finale. Just like Westworld, I think we can expect maybe an hour-and-a-half finale for Game of Thrones to wrap up. But other than that, I want to prepare you to expect approximately 60 to 65 minutes average for every Game of Thrones episode, with the odd episode that's about 70 to 80 minutes long. But most importantly, let's think and theorize about when we can scratch our addiction for Game of Thrones. When is the trailer going to come out? And I think in order to understand this, we need to look at the previous seasons and look at their marketing structure to make a very informed decision on when we're going to start seeing marketing for Season 8. So let's start with Game of Thrones Season 6. At that time, they finished filming the show in December of 2015. And the first promo we ever got for Game of Thrones was in the same month of December 2015. And this promo just featured old footage with voiceovers to really start getting the audience hyped for Game of Thrones Season 8.
They have no idea what's going to happen.
And then there was the Hall of Faces teaser, which dropped February 14th of 2016, about a month after they finished filming. And then they finally dropped the first trailer, and that was March 9th of 2016. So what we can take from this is that immediately after they stopped filming, they started promoting the show. And the first trailer dropped about 3 months after they stopped shooting. But the most important thing here is, how does this promotional material match the release date of the season? And this is a different case because when they finished filming in December, they only had 4 months to promote the show until it was released. So really, the promotional material started coming out 3 months in advance before the show. And the trailer dropped just a month before the show aired. And the same patterns are comparable to Season 7. They stopped filming in February. And naturally, right after they stopped filming, we get the promotional material. We get a teaser for Game of Thrones Season 7. We get the Long Walk promo in March. And the official trailer dropped in May, which was at the perfect time to hype up the audience for Game of Thrones a couple months before the show actually aired in July. But I think if we're going to look at Season 8, it's a very unique case. And the reason why is because the other shows wrapped up filming and only had 4 months to promote and market the show to release it. Whereas Game of Thrones Season 8 finished filming in July, and it's going to come out in April. That is 9 months of a wait. So I believe that everything is going to be pushed forward. I would say in the next month or 2 months, we might get a behind the scenes, or we might get a teaser that reflects on past Game of Thrones seasons. But I believe the first time we're ever going to see a professional promo like the Hall of Faces or the Dragon Statue promo is going to be in December or January. The reason why is because at that point, they're going to be 4 or 5 months out from the show releasing. And at that point, you want to get the audience hyped and excited. So it kind of sucks, but I think we won't be seeing much of Game of Thrones until this December or January of 2019. And that takes us to the first trailer. Now, HBO won't release a trailer this year. Because of the fact that the show is coming out in the first half of 2019, they don't want to hype up the audience and reveal too much of the show way too far in advance, because they want Game of Thrones to be relevant in the audience's mind. So this tells me that we're going to get a first trailer probably in February. And that will be perfect because it will really hype up the audience of Game of Thrones, just a couple months before the show airs. And another important thing too is if you look at the Season 7 trailers, they were still in post-production when they were releasing the trailers. If you look at this shot of Tyrion, they never added in the dragons. But in this case, in Season 8, since there's so much post-production, we will see that every single shot in the trailer will be pretty much finished with the CGI that is needed. And this is great for HBO because it gives them the time to polish up the show, and it lets them promote and market it the way that they want to. So the final season of Game of Thrones really comes out with a bang. So just in summary, based on the comments of President Casey Bloys, and based on previous seasons, I think we can all take to the bank that Game of Thrones Season 8 will come out early April. But nothing will reveal Game of Thrones Season 8. I think we can expect a trailer and the actual marketing campaign for Game of Thrones Season 8 this December or January of 2019. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. But until next time, see you guys later.